and I can ask people, or we might be able to do it at the end. So, okay, I don't want to take any more time.
All right, thank you so much, Lori. So my name is Bobby Foster, and I have been communicating with several of you about the Indiana Coalition Network website, and the pilot project includes webinars all around helping our local coordinating councils get better at what they do, and kind of help our communication within our own LCCs, but across the state. Just make it an easier transition. So about a few weeks ago, the website went live. So if you haven't been on there, the website is on the lower left of the screen, indianacoalitionnetwork.org. And if you have completed, if you're an LCC and you've completed your onboard form and turned it in, you should be able to get into the private side, which that's where we're going to save information like this webinar and information that's a little more pertinent to the LCC. So it's an exciting time to get into this website from the start. So thank you for joining us today. This is the first webinar. We're going to plan these out on the 4th Thursday at noon through the end of the year, and then we'll see what happens after that. So today's topic is understanding Indiana's recovery infrastructure and recovery-ready communities. So we brought in experts, thankfully. They're taking time out of their day to give us presentations today. So if you want them, we do have their email addresses up here, and we'll show that again at the end of their presentations today. Some housekeeping items, as Lori has been doing, changing your name or so that your county is first. She's been gracious enough to help get everybody through the waiting room and onto the site. Jody Miller is monitoring our chat box today. So if there's a question that you have, feel free to just type it in that chat box and she will raise it up for our presenters to answer. As in every Zoom call, we all have that one that gets unmuted and then it's hard for everybody else to hear. So if we could just remain on mute unless you do have a question or you are presenting, we really appreciate it. So we are recording this webinar. So if you would like to view it again, we will be posting it on the Indiana Coalition Network for the LCCs to get back into. So Allie is going to be our slide coordinator today because, of course, my laptop's got some technical difficulties. So Allie, if you go to the next slide.
Oh, come on.
One less. Can you go back one? There we go. So objectives, because what's the point? Why are we here today? We're here to learn more about why a recovery-oriented focus is essential in building recovery-ready communities. Education on the types of recovery supports available, and more importantly, how you can get access to those supports. And finally today, Lori Crosdell, who is Scott County's LCC, she is going to pull it all together to see how the recovery network and the LCCs can collaborate to make that really strong community. Next slide. Our presenters today are Ananda Bates. She is the Executive Director for the Indiana Affiliation of Recovery Residences. She's actually taking time out of her day, another webinar, another series of meetings to give us some information today. Jody Miller. She's the Deputy Director of Indiana Addictions Issues Coalition. Heather Rodriguez, Manager of the Indiana Recovery Network, and Lori Crosdell, the Coordinator for CEAS of Scott County, our local LCC. Next. So what is recovery? I'm going to turn the meeting over to Jody Miller.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jody Miller. I am the Deputy Director for the Indiana Addictions Issues Coalition, and I'm going to just kind of hit some highlights here on what is recovery. I think you probably all have a good understanding of it, but we're going to go ahead and just kind of go through the basic definitions for that. So let's see. Okay. So what is recovery? The Webster's Dictionary definition is a return to a normal state of health, mind, or strength, the action or process of regaining possession or control of something lost or stolen. And SAMHSA's definition is a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live in a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. And the CCAR definition of recovery is you are in recovery when you say you're in recovery. So, and I think that that's some overall definitions. SAMHSA does have 4 dimensions of recovery, and we'll talk a little bit more about those with the Indiana Recovery Network with Heather. But we'll basically just give you a brief overview of what those dimensions are. So the first one will be health. So health is overcoming or managing one's disease or symptoms and making informed, healthy choices that support physical and emotional well-being. Home is having a stable and safe place to live, which is vital to anyone's recovery. And Ananda will be talking about the recovery residents in the state and the importance of that. Purpose is conducting meaningful daily activities and having the independence, income, and resources to participate in society. So that's, including a lot of other things too with employment. Community is having relationships and social networks that provide support, friendship, love, and hope, which I think is definitely very important as far as the recovery community. I myself am in long-term recovery, and I know that all of these dimensions are important for sustaining a successful recovery. The source is recovery and recovery support, and that is actually through the SAMHSA, the website. So that is an overview of what the dimensions of recovery are, and a little bit of a definition. You can go on to the next slide. And why do the 4 dimensions of recovery matter? Okay, recovery is holistic, which means treating the whole person, which is one of SAMHSA's guiding principles. Improvements to an individual's overall health can increase stability and success in recovery. It reduces ER visits and justice involvement, increase in employment, engagement, and continuing education. And I think most importantly, increases family and community involvement. So that gives you an overview of what, what recovery is as far as definition, and really just what the dimensions of recovery are. So does anybody have any questions about that at this time? All right. Well, we will start with our first presenter, which is Ananda Bates. And I'm assuming Ananda's joined the call.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, hi, Ananda.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Well,
Good.
if you would like to go ahead, this just gives you an overview of Ananda. She is the ED for the Indiana Affiliation of Recovery Residents, which is known as INARR. She has been a licensed clinical addictions counselor in the state of Indiana since 2011, an adjunct professor for 7 years, and facilitates trainings on mental health, addictions, and leadership development across the United States. INARR's mission is to create, evaluate, and improve standards and measures of quality for all levels of recovery residences. Has over 120 certified recovery residences in the state of Indiana, provides technical assistance and formal training to certified operators throughout the state. So here is Ananda with her presentation.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. I am always excited to present and talk about INARR in the importance of recovery residences, especially as Jody just talked about those 4 dimensions of recovery, and we know that one of those, as she mentioned, is home and providing stable and safe housing. And we know how important that is for people in early recovery. And so INARR, we certify recovery residences across the state. And when they are certified with us, then that is a way of showing and saying that they are following these standards according to our national organization, and that they are providing quality, safe, and stable housing for those people in early recovery. And so what I wanted to do is just kind of provide a couple of statistics that really support why recovery residences are so important. And so in 2018, NIDA indicated that the relapse rates for SUD, or substance use disorders, is approximately 40 to 60%, and that relapses could signify the necessity to re-examine a person's course of treatment, as relapses can be very dangerous, and as we know, especially dealing with the opioid epidemic, that it can be deadly. The first 12 months of that period is really vital, and it is a really crucial period during which people contend with clinical issues. They're dealing with housing, they're dealing with financial issues, maybe the criminal justice system, grief and loss. And so these things put them at a higher risk for relapse. And so Moos and Moos in 2006 determined that individuals with more social or recovery capital are more likely to show improved outcomes for short-term remission. Therefore, recovery houses are uniquely qualified to assist these individuals in all phases of their recovery, especially those in early recovery, by furnishing and helping them to develop that social capital and recovery supports. We can go to the next slide, please. Recovery residences are safe, healthy, family-like, substance-free living environments that support individuals in recovery from addiction. While recovery residences can vary widely in structure, all are centered on peer support and provide a connection to services that do promote long-term recovery, and again, helps them to develop and establish that recovery capital. Recovery housing benefits individuals in recovery by reinforcing a substance-free lifestyle and providing direct connections to other peers in the community, mutual support groups, and recovery support services. Substance-free, I want to make sure that I mention this, does not prohibit prescribed medications taken as directed by a licensed prescriber, such as pharmacotherapies that are specially approved by the FDA for the treatment of opioid use disorder, as well as other medications that are approved to treat co-occurring disorders. Next slide. So in order for us to deliver the best care possible, recovery house operators should include to which level of care their facility will operate with their residents. And so one of the things that we are really proud of is that SAMHSA supports our 4 levels of care that we have that are identified by our national organization, which is the National Alliance of Recovery Residents and other stakeholder agencies. So we're really excited about that, to really have the support of SAMHSA to say that these are our identified levels of support in terms of recovery residences. Next slide. So when we think about these 4 levels, and I'll explain them very briefly and how they vary, when we think about the recovery process, that is nonlinear. So someone doesn't have to come in at level 1 and then they move their way up. People can enter recovery residences at any level. It's just really determined by the needs that they have and a mutual agreement that the recovery residents can support the resident, and that the resident says, like, this is a place that that is appropriate for me. And so with INARR, we do have operators that operate at all of the 4 levels of support, but our most common, you will see, are level 3 and 4, and we'll kind of talk about what each of those mean. Next slide. So 4 levels of support again. So we have the peer elected, where it is peer run. So there's there may be volunteer staff. There probably won't be paid staff, and so it is peer elected. So the peers within that home elect who is going to kind of oversee and kind of be responsible for the day-to-day of that. And of course, they have the operator that owns it. Peer monitor, this may be a volunteer that monitors them a little more closely and provides support to them. They may attend outside meetings and things of that nature. When we get to level 3 and 4, this is where there's staff supervision. So there may be one paid staff, there may be a peer resident that may be in place. And so here, not only is it a peer monitor that monitors, and we talked about peer support and providing that to the residents in the recovery residence, but there's also other staff involved in this process. And at a level 3, we start to see them offering more services like case management. They may have a peer that's on staff that may provide some services to them. And so as we move further up those levels, then you start to see an increase in services that they can provide. And with level 4, it's all of the combination of 1, 2, and 3, but they are equipped to provide clinical services. There's clinical and administrative oversight. And so the next slide will kind of go into that in a little bit more detail. And so here you see that it's broken down, and these standards were developed by a national organization. And so we have standards that the houses must meet. And they're really broken down into these 4 standard criteria, and that's administration, services, the residents, and the staff. And so again, as we see, level 1 is peer run, level 2 is monitored, level 3 is supervised, and then level 4 is a service provider. And so depending upon the needs of that recovery residents, they get to select what level of support that they are interested in becoming certified in. And we work with them to say, yes, this is an appropriate level for you to be certified, or to say, like, we need to have some more things in place before you can be certified at that level. And again, level 4 is the highest level, which does include credentialed and licensed staff that can provide clinical services. Next slide. So then next we talk about the certification process. And so if the recovery residents, I want to make it clear that this is a voluntary certification. However, in order to receive Recovery Works funding, they must be INARR certified. So that's definitely one of the benefits, but we also do other things to create value. We offer trainings, we provide technical assistance, mentorship for recovery residences. So we do a lot to kind of assist them even after they have their certification. And so the certification process, once they get their certification, it is good for 2 years. And so what happens is that once they are ready, they have their policies and procedures in place, they've been operating for at least 60 days, and they do have residents in the home, then they can submit their application and assurances for review. That also includes the INARR Code of Ethics that they will agree to adhere to for all staff. And then after we receive that, the application has been approved, then we schedule a technical assistance session with the certification manager to prepare them for the site visit. We know because of COVID and everything going on that right now our site visits are virtual, which a lot of recovery residences have appreciated. It's the same process. It's just virtual, and we record those sessions so that if they need to go back and watch and say like, hey, we forgot which, what we needed to do, then that information is readily available for them. During that technical assistance session, we are preparing them for the virtual visit, things that they need to have in place. They are submitting and we're reviewing all of their policies and procedures to make sure that they are in accordance with the national standards. And then after we have everything that we need, then the peer review is scheduled. And so during those peer reviews, there's a certification manager and we have contracted reviewers. And then we conduct the site visit, which includes policies and procedures, and then we do a physical dwelling inspection as well. After that is done, if there's any corrections, they submit those. And once we have everything that we need, then there is a recommendation for approval that is sent to our board of directors and myself. And after they are approved, we send a letter to them welcoming them to INARR. And again, that certification is good for 2 years, and then they recertify and go through that process again. And this may be my last slide, I believe. Yes. Are there any questions about recovery residences? And again, I'm so excited. We now have almost 130 certified recovery residences in the state, and we are continuing to grow and having site visits and certifying and recertifying people on a weekly basis. So we are excited because we know that beds are definitely needed for the recovery community. So we're so excited, and I'm so humbled to be a part of this. Are there any questions that you can think of initially? If not, my email has been posted as well, and it's abates@mhai.net. Please feel free to email me at any time, and I'm more than happy to help in any way that I can. Thank you so much.
Ananda, we cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your day to share that. I think that's just a fantastic amount of information, maybe a little overwhelming, but some great work for us to share. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we're going to turn the meeting now over to Jody Miller, Deputy Director for Indiana Addictions Issues Coalition. Thank you, Jody.
Hello again, everyone. I'm going to be talking about the peer supports. So if we want to go to the next slide, we'll get started. What are peer recovery supports? And I'm going to just kind of go through this briefly. Peer supports are individuals with a lived experience. I myself am a peer recovery coach and certified level 2. Peer supports can be complementary to treatment, but do not provide clinical services. I think that's something, sometimes people don't always understand that, but we are not clinicians, we are coaches. We wear a different hat there for that. Peer supports assist individuals and families in their recovery journey. Peer supports, there are 2 different credentials currently in Indiana for those. Peers provide hope and understanding while holding the recovery accountable in a non-punitive manner. I think that's an important thing too also with the recovery coaches, is it's just someone that can meet them where they're at, and also that accountability piece. All right, next slide, please. Okay, certified peer supports, which I'm assuming most of you are familiar with, but this will give you a little bit more information. Peer supports are individuals who have been successful in the recovery process, who aid others experiencing similar situations. So it's that, common connection for someone that they can relate to. Through shared understanding, respect, and mutual empowerment, peer supports help people become and stay engaged in the recovery process and reduce the likelihood of return to use. They provide hope and understanding while holding the recovery accountable. Like we talked about, they're complementary to treatment but do not provide clinical services. They aid the individuals in navigating through recovery support and services and accessing these services. And Certified Addiction Peer Recovery Coach, the CAPRC, and Community Health Worker, CHW, and the Certified Recovery Specialist, which is CRS. So those are the different certifications. Can go on to the next slide. Peer supports provide a person-centered, strength-based, recovery-oriented approach, walking alongside the recovery in his or her recovery journey. They remove barriers and connect individuals with recovery support and services. I like to say we align resources, community-based support, relationship-focused, trauma-informed care, and understands that each individual is capable of recovery and is entitled to choosing a pathway to recovery that works best for the recovery. And I like this part of it too, where everybody's on their own journey if they say they're in recovery, and everybody gets to choose their own pathway. Just because I work a certain pathway doesn't mean that that's good for everybody. So there's lots of different ways to be in recovery, and it's up to the individual. All right, next slide. And I think just the overall goals of peer recovery support. Peer recovery support assumes that each person is capable of recovery and entitled to the pathway of their choosing. And I know that's an important piece, and just from the work that I've done as a coach, really just helping the individual realize that they're worthy of recovery. They also, peer recovery support is strength-based and focuses on what the recovery can accomplish versus what their deficits are. And I like the strength-based approach because it's really focusing on the positive rather than the negative. Not that you don't address those challenges in people's lives, but trying to really focus on the positive things that are going on in their lives. And then the 4 goals of a peer recovery support are encourage hope, optimism, and healthy living, removing barriers, promoting recovery, and connecting individuals with recovery support services. And like I said before, I think overall the recovery, the recovery coaches, they're able to connect to those individuals, help them feel comforted and knowing there's someone that shares the same experience that they're going through, so they don't feel alone, and then also can help them get to the services that they need, which is an important part of recovery for all of us. So does anybody have any questions for me at this time as far as just what the recovery support services have to offer? All right, well, our next presenter is Heather Rodriguez, and she is the manager of the Indiana Recovery Network and has been very involved with this project. And she also is a certified addiction peer recovery coach. So there you go.
Thanks, Jody. Here I am.
There you
go. Okay, yep. So I'm Heather Rodriguez. I'm manager of the Indiana Recovery Network, and with Indiana Addictions Issues Coalition, I'm manager of recovery community development. So with that title, I help organizations around the state develop recovery community organizations. And so my portion of the presentation, I will be discussing a couple pieces of the recovery infrastructure, beginning with what recovery community organizations are and how they can benefit individuals and families in recovery in your community. So next slide, please. So what is a recovery community organization? So they are also referred to as RCOs. They are independent grassroots nonprofit organizations. They are led and governed by the peer community. Typically, their board would consist of 51% of individuals in recovery or with a lived experience. They are based off of primarily volunteers. They may have one full-time paid staff member or part-time. And those are typically individuals in recovery or with a lived experience, meaning they may have a friend or family member in recovery or active addiction. So similar to the peer supports, RCOs do not provide clinical services. They can partner with local treatment providers to provide a continuum of care and help people have sustainable recovery supports and services, but individuals would not go to an RCO to seek treatment or detox or any of those things. So there are 3 core principles to an RCO, which are a recovery vision, an authenticity of voice to the recovery community, and holding the accountability of the recovery community. So the recovery vision, again, is just having a sustainable recovery support and services for the community, something that's going to basically help individuals in their recovery journey. A lot of times, treatment is kind of the acute care model, but recovery supports and services are that continuum of care for the chronic supports that are needed for addictions treatment. So authenticity of voice is just really hearing and listening to the needs of the recovery community, identifying gaps in services, and then ways to create those services and support for community members. Some communities, as you know, especially in our rural communities, there are limited to no recovery supports and services available. And so RCOs can create those needed supports and services for the community. And then accountability, again, is just bringing individuals in recovery together to help provide services, give recovery that space that says we do recover, we are valued, and we can give back to our communities. And then the 3 core strategies of an RCO are public education and awareness, policy advocacy, and then the peer-based supports. So an example of that would be Indiana Addictions Issues Coalition is actually a statewide RCO, meaning that we focus on the public advocacy or education and advocacy, and we work on some policy initiatives. And then we help individuals learn more about peer supports and how to integrate them in their services, but we do not provide direct services through peers necessarily. We kind of do now, but I'll go into that later. An example of an RCO that does provide direct services through peer supports would be Scott County Thrive. So they have a recovery engagement center. So it's a physical location where they have peers on staff and volunteer who can meet with individuals, help them navigate through their recovery journey, provide fun activities, which we'll discuss that later. But just to kind of give you an idea, there are different types of RCOs, and these are the things that they focus on. Next slide, please. So as stated, RCOs were created in response to unmet needs of the recovery communities. They provide a safe space for individuals to find support for one another while forming a collective voice, to demonstrate to the community that individuals in recovery can thrive and give back. And then they provide sustainability for individuals in recovery. Next slide, please. So they can be statewide, as mentioned, with a focus on advocacy and education. They can provide direct services through peer support. So those peers that Jody mentioned, so they may have the recovery coaches on staff or volunteers, the CRSs or CHWs. And then they provide the linkages to community resources, life skills, and skills development. A lot of times when someone has been in active addiction, they're in early recovery, it can be overwhelming knowing where to go to get supports and services. So those peer supports can kind of act as a navigator and help individuals download complete applications for services, things like that, and just kind of help them gain those skills that they need to continue in their journeys. So they provide safe, sober social activities. So that can be anything from yoga to art classes, community cleanups and volunteer days. I've seen some RCOs where they'll do like community bike rides or do coffee, just different fun events. And then they can provide training opportunities for the peer supports, educate organizations and community stakeholders on the value of the peers and how they can add just add to the community. And then RCOs can be faith-based as well. Next slide, please. And then, so that leads me to the Indiana Recovery Network, which is essentially an online recovery community. The IRN was created to form a statewide network for recovery organizations. So that's where the RCOs kind of tie in here. So this is a digital platform where we bring all the RCOs together or other organizations that provide recovery supports and services. We have about 70 registered members now. And so our goal was to remove barriers to accessing recovery supports and services for individuals and families in recovery. A lot of times if you do a Google search on recovery, you're going to automatically it'll pop up or generate links to treatment providers or recovery from like a physical injury or things of that nature, not necessarily recovery from substance use or mental health concerns. So that's where the Indiana Recovery Network comes in. And it's also a way for organizations to collaborate and connect with one another. It is statewide. We do have monthly calls, so similar to the Indiana Coalition Network, we do monthly calls as well where we have policy updates, state happenings, and so that's usually provided by the Division of Mental Health and Addictions. And then we have one registered member present on what they are doing, where they're located, and how folks can connect with them. We also have an information exchange piece to the Indiana Recovery Network, a news and events page, and a recovery organization list where you can find all of our registered members. Next slide, please. So again, Indiana Recovery Network, we have coined it as Indiana's Recovery Hub. Our membership is free. We do have, I believe, 3 LCCs who are registered members of the Indiana Recovery Network. It's a statewide resource, and it's categorized by those 4 dimensions of recovery that Jody had mentioned. And then searches on our website can be conducted by city or zip code. And if you have not yet checked out the website, it is indianarecoverynetwork.org. Next slide, please. And then, so part of our project or our website is in response to COVID-19, DMHA and others were concerned about, as we all know, a lot of places had to close their doors. Individuals were not able to access recovery or any supports and services, basically, there for a while. And so there was a real concern about individuals who were in active addiction or early recovery not being able to get the supports and services they needed. And so DMHA reached out to us because they knew about the Recovery Network and that we already have connections to all these great organizations throughout the state. So we developed these regional recovery hubs with, so through funding by DMHA, with partnership with the Governor's Office, Next Level Recovery. And so we partnered with existing recovery organizations throughout the state. We divided the state into 5 regions. And so each region has a few recovery hubs is what we coined them as. And so we were really partnering with organizations that already utilize those peer supports like Jody had mentioned, and they're listed here again. And the goal is for these hubs to develop relationships throughout communities. And we have a map where you'll see how it's broken down. So next slide, please. So here's how our regional map looks. And again, we've encouraged these organizations to expand their outreach efforts. So they may be located in one county, but they've been assigned multiple counties through their hub. And so they are doing outreach, connecting with organizations, letting them know about this project. I believe some have also reached out to some of the LCCs. And then so our focus was really on underserved and marginalized populations. Services and resources that these hubs are identifying and connecting folks with can include, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Okay. So our underserved populations include individuals in DOC, so reentry, also county justice systems, opioid treatment providers, Medicaid assisted treatment providers, domestic violence program or organizations, individuals experiencing homelessness. It also can include like food pantries, clothing banks, just really any need an individual might need. Again, this project is grant funded. So these services are offered to individuals and organizations for free. There is no charge for that. And it just is a way to ensure individuals can continue to engage with peer supports without restraints. So a lot of providers already use peer supports, but unfortunately an individual can only maintain that connection to that peer as long as they're receiving treatment or whatever that looks like. But once they've continued that program and move along, that peer does not go with them. So through the hub, this person can remain engaged with this peer support throughout however their journey looks for them. And then these referrals to or from the hubs can include detox treatment, transitional housing, so recovery residents, as Ananda spoke of, RCOs, recovery engagement centers, food pantries, etc. Next slide, please. So this map is a little wonky and kind of hard to see, but I just wanted to give you an idea of these. This is a list of all of our hubs. So all of the organizations that are providing services, and it kind of shows you which hub is providing services to which county. And as you can see in our Northeast region, Jay County Drug Prevention Coalition, the LCC, is also one of our hubs as well. And this map is also available on the Indiana Recovery Network website. If you visit our website, there's a link that says resources. The last option is regional recovery hubs. And then so there's a link to the map. It also lists all the organizations providing services. Next slide, please. So one way folks can connect to a peer through the regional recovery hubs Again, if you visit our website, indianarecoverynetwork.org, you can see there's a link on the homepage that says connect to a peer. So individuals can fill out this brief online form, and it is also bilingual, requesting to be connected to a peer support, and that can be either via email or phone call, whatever the individual prefers. They will be connected or contacted by a peer within 24 hours. That peer will engage with that individual, identify what their needs are, where they're located, and then provide a warm handoff to a hub that's in their region. So it could be a peer support in the central region, that's that first kind of contact, but then they will be able to identify, okay, this peer is located in such and such county, and I know this is that hub, so let me provide that direct connection. So we're not just giving individuals yet another list, here's a list of all this stuff, and good luck to you. This is an actual live human being that they can get support through. And then also, some of you may have already seen some of the flyers that have been distributed. So each hub has their own flyer with their logo and their contact information. And so each hub has been distributing these when they're doing those outreach and engagement efforts. And so that's one way also individuals can connect with the peer support in their region, in their county, and get those services that they need. Next slide, please. And then we were also really excited about this piece of our project. We have partnered with 211 to be an option when folks call 211 to get services. They will have an option to connect with a peer support. If they select that option, and I think it's under addiction treatment or something, addiction services, an option will be to be connected to a peer support through the Recovery Hub. They will click on that. We will have peer live people available 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So an individual can speak with a certified peer support, get connected to a hub, and these peers will also be trained on the other services that are available through 211. So if they know an individual is really looking for maybe a service offered through 211, they will know how to transfer that individual to that corresponding service. In the overnight hours, we will have an option for folks to connect to the new 211 crisis line. So if somebody's in crisis, they want to speak to a live person, they will be able to connect directly through the crisis line. And in turn, the individual on the crisis line may be able to take their information and then notify the peer when they're back on staff in the morning. Hey, so-and-so really wants to connect with the coach. I just talked them through whatever they're experiencing in the moment. Please follow up with them. So that is coming very, very, very soon, and we are super excited about that. Next slide, and that might be my last one. Yeah, so I know it's a lot of information, and I do talk really fast, so I apologize. But does anybody have any questions for me on RCOs, IRN, the regional recovery hubs? All righty, well, thank you.
Thanks, Heather, for that information. Lots of great, exciting things happening throughout the state with the Indiana Recovery Network and the hubs. And, you know, it gives you all an opportunity to connect to those hubs at your level to do some collaboration. So our next presenter is Lori Crosdell, and her mission, the mission of CEASE is to reduce the incidence and prevalence of substance abuse and addictions among youth and adults in Scott County. We are striving to become a community of abundant life and dignity where prevention is stress, recovery is always possible, and many entry points into recovery are available. So that's, so welcome, Lori, thank you. She's very actively involved in this project, so the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jody. Appreciate it. You can go on to the next slide. I want to welcome and thank all of my fellow LCC coordinators for being on this Zoom call today. We have been working so diligently on this project, and we're so excited to have you be a part of it. I just want to tell you a little bit about Scott County's journey. And excuse me while I'm checking, we still have people in the waiting room that I'm letting in. If you have not already done so before I move on, I've got somebody named M. Greer that we need to know the name of your county. If you cannot do it yourself, I am happy to rename you. but I don't know who that is. So if you want to put it in the chat box, maybe. But I just wanted to share with you a little bit about Scott County's journey. So as you can see from this slide, on the left side is our, we have two coalitions in Scott County. The first one is our LCC, CEASE of Scott County, and that's the Coalition to Eliminate the Abuse of Substances. On the right side, you see we also have a health coalition called Get Healthy Scott County. And then the center is our logo for our Scott County Recovery Community Organization, Thrive. So just to tell you a little bit about our journey, probably about 2014, the Get Healthy Scott County Coalition went about doing a needs assessment and a survey of live person face-to-face survey of over 200 community leaders.
Today, let me see what's happening today. Today I am here.
Sorry, we went about doing a survey of leaders, community stakeholders, and a needs assessment. So there was an online survey, and there were also 200 face-to-face interviews. And through that process, we were trying to determine what it was as a whole health coalition we needed to address. Almost unanimously, people decided that in 2014, we needed to address substance use and misuse in Scott County. So therefore, we set out to do that. But then, as most of you know, at the end of 2014 and the beginning of 2015, Scott County was struck with an unprecedented HIV epidemic. This took over the work of both coalitions. It was an all hands on deck situation. And so everything else that we were trying to think about and worry about took a backseat to the work that we were doing that needing to address this HIV epidemic. So we had treatment and mental health providers coming together at that time. I think it was on a Wednesday night every week. And we were meeting at the Hope to Others Church on the north side of Austin, which was the epicenter of the epidemic. Through this process, we began to make connections with individuals who then became a part of the work of the Get Healthy Scott County Coalition. We decided to hold some, we held some planning sessions with the help of the Great Lakes, let's see, at that time it was the Great Lakes Addiction Technology Transfer Center. We had the help of Lynetta Albright and Tom Cox, and they were leading us through some strategic planning sessions. One of these happened to take place on Austin's north side in that same location, the Hope to Others Church. And at that meeting where we were doing an environmental scan and world cafes, for the very first time, we met two of our members of our recovery community, Kelly Dean, who is now Kelly Hans, and Debbie, and I can't remember her last name, but she was Kelly's sponsor at the time. They came to this, and it was at that meeting, because at the time of the HIV epidemic, in the entire county, we had 3 recovery groups meeting, and they were all in Scottsburg, and they were all AA. We had no Narcotics Anonymous and no other types of groups, no peer-to-peer, no NA, no Smart Recovery, nothing. So it was at that meeting that Kelly was made a connection with Michelle Cordy, who opened up a place to be on the square, on the Scottsburg Square, and allowed NA to begin once again to start meeting in Scott County, Indiana. That connection was made, and from there it has just catapulted off into this amazing relationship. Through that process, we began to involve Kelly. Kelly at the time was still living in Louisville. She eventually, very soon thereafter, relocated back to her home of Scott County in Scottsburg. And Kelly was able to help us make contact with many other members of our recovery community. They worked with us systematically through our CEASE and Get Healthy coalitions to develop a systematic, recovery-oriented systems of care strategic plan. This strategic plan involved our recovery community every step of the way. And when I say our recovery community, I'm saying that we had anywhere from 5 to 8 individuals from our recovery community coming to these meetings. They helped us because two of the things that we were addressing in the strategic plan were multiple paths to recovery and expanding recovery supports in Scott County community and the jail. So one of the things that Tom Cox consistently stressed to us was that you have to involve members of the recovery community in everything that you do. So we took that to heart very strongly. Over the course of this planning that went on, and Kelly bringing all these recovery community people on board, shortly thereafter, we went from only having 3 meetings a week in the county to 15 recovery meetings every week, meeting nearly every night of or day of the week in the community. And now we currently, offer, there's AA, there's NA, which Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Celebrate Recovery, which is a faith-based recovery group, and then we're working on getting people trained in smart recovery and some other, and of course peer-to-peer. We made this amazing connection with Stan DeKemper and Nate Rush, and they began, and Tony, and they began bringing people from Indy every single Friday night for this Hope Over Dope meeting on the north side of Austin. And so we had some incredible connections that were made with people up north. Those connections allowed us to just develop this incredible relationship with Stan DeKemper, who sadly is no longer with us, and Nate Rush from the Indiana Addictions Issues Coalition, or well, actually it's the ICATA, but they brought to Scott County at that time, through whatever grants, we didn't even have to pay for it then, of course we do now, but they brought peer recovery coach training, ethics training, and HIV training to Scott County, to our peers, so that they could eventually become certified addictions peer recovery coaches. At that first training, I think we trained about 18 people, and now, to make a long story short, because I see that it's 12:58, we now have a fully functioning and thriving recovery community organization. We have a board of 15 individuals, of which I'm on that board, and another one of my colleagues, Carol Dunn, is on this call. She is also on that board. We are working on the board right now with trying to become, we're actually under the umbrella of another 501c3 in Scott County, the Scott County Partnership. And so right now they are our fiscal agent. We eventually want to branch out into our own 501c3. And when we actually have an ad hoc committee working on that right now to become fully sustainable on our own. But I just want to encourage you all to tell you that if you are not there yet, if a little bitty county of 24,000 people in the middle of an HIV epidemic can reach out to and find and engage members of our very, very small recovery community, I want to encourage you that you can do the same as well. It might take a little work to find out who those people are. But I guarantee you in your small communities, because we were very small, if you talk to people and reach out, you can find individuals who are willing to talk about being a person in long-term recovery. And if you meet with them and encourage them to attend your LCC meetings and make that a very vital part of your goals in involving them and everything that you do and all the planning. You know, in term, I know we're supposed to address treatment and intervention. Well, as a part of that, we are also have added recovery, because it involves treatment, intervention, and then recovery, because recovery is what happens, you know, after you get into treatment. So I know that I probably said enough, but I just can't tell you, these people in the recovery community, they're some of my dearest friends. I respect them. I highly regard them. I actually even am married to a wonderful man that's a person in long-term recovery. So I can't say enough about the amazing benefits and assets that they brought to our LCC. I think you will find a whole new dimension open up for you as an LCC as you involve people in long-term recovery in your efforts. So I encourage you to do that. That's all I have. I don't want to keep you too long. If you have any questions, if you want to unmute yourself, you can certainly ask. So we'll give you a second if anybody wants to ask a question, and then I think Bobby's going to wrap it up for us. Okay.
I'm not hearing anyone talk over me if we jumped on that one too quick, but we appreciate your time today for coming out and listening to the webinar so we could share this information about the Indiana's Recovery Network. So at this time, I would like to just open it up to a 30-second brief announcement if you have anything about your community events, your LCC. Things that are happening. This is something that we try to do with the Indiana Coalition Network. We can post information that you have as well as resources. I'm going to take the first 30 seconds and plug next month's webinar. It will be August 27th at noon. The topic is going to be substance use and misuse, prevention and education. That's where we're going to look closely at resources like the Great Lakes Prevention Technology Transfer Centers and how prevention works, especially in this time of COVID. So if anybody has anything you want to jump on quick, we're open. All right. If you're not a part of the LCC, or if you are the LCC, we encourage you to get connected with the Indiana Coalition Network by onboarding. So check your county, check your neighboring counties to see if they've been onboarded. If they haven't, I'm going to go ahead and put the email address in here. They can send an email to info@indianacoalitionnetwork.org. And that is all I had.
And I'm going to be calling those counties this week and next. So if you haven't onboarded yet, you might be getting a phone call from me to encourage you to do so. It's very easy.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you especially to our presenters.
Great to see and hear from y'all.
Bye, everybody.